But then he became a Christian. And when he became a Christian, Bob sort of decided, I can't really bet anymore. I think it's part of my old lifestyle. I don't want to bet anymore. So Bob vowed he would never bet again. Now he's a Christian. Now he wouldn't bet. But what happened was he did that and he was doing well for months. He didn't bet. But then friends that he had from betting, they used to invite him to things. And he kept saying, no, I can't go to that. But then one of his mates had a birthday and they had the birthday at the Dogs. And he thought, oh, I have to go. I should go. So he went and he ended up betting again at the Dogs. And it just became a thing where he was easily led astray. It was easily gone back into that world and he started betting again. And it was a continued struggle for Bob. I've been led astray by people before, I'm sure we all have. But I was easily led astray. I was 19 years old, I was helping at a church that took people away on a camp. And on the way home from the camp, I was taking 15, 16-year-olds in the back of the car, and we were joking about prank calls and that sort of thing, the ones we've done in the past. And then they said, oh, why don't you do one now? I was like, oh yeah, that'd be a good idea, let's do that. And so I pulled over, and I prank called another girl who was a part of the youth group, telling her we crashed. Anyway, I did it too well, and she got really upset. And she had a bit of a falling out with me, and lots of different things went on. And so that wasn't good. I was easily led astray by these people. And you might have a similar experience, but that's what happens, isn't it? So now we're going to come to our reading, and we'll see how that was pretty true for Solomon. So Solomon, we've got chapter 11. Before chapter 11 happened, Solomon became the king, he built the temple, he did loads of good stuff. But here we have Solomon now. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter, Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonites, and Hittites. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, you must not intermarry with them, because they will surely turn your heart after their gods. Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. He followed Ashereth, the goddess of the Sidonites, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely, as David his father had done. On a hill east of Jerusalem, Solomon built a high place for Moesh, the detestable god of Moab, and for Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. He did the same for all his foreign wives, who burnt incense and offered sacrifices to their gods. The Lord became angry with Solomon, because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. Although he had forbidden Solomon not to follow other gods, Solomon did not keep the Lord's command. So the Lord said to Solomon, since this is your attitude, and you have not kept my covenant and my decree, which I have commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. People lead us astray. I don't know if you noticed in that reading, it said, and his wives turned his heart away. And his wives turned his heart away. It's often people that turn us away or lead us astray from things. When I was 15, I used to bunk school sometimes. And the guys I used to bunk school with, they all smoked. And it's really strange that they didn't have a lighter, so they'd round someone's house, they'd light it off the, what's it called?
Cooker?
Yeah, off the cooker. And they all wanted me to smoke. It was really strange. They kept trying to make me say I didn't smoke. But it's really funny how people want you to be like them, don't they? They say, this is my behaviour, now you come and do some of the behaviour I'm doing. Come with me, come with me. And people often lead us astray. I had a car crash recently, and in the car crash, Stacey was in it, and Jade, and Johnny, and it hurt a little bit, like doof, and then our neck ached for the rest of the day, and it woke up, it ached a little bit, then it went away, and I was fine. I didn't take any time off work, I could sleep alright, nothing really untoward. But then I got phone call after phone call of people saying, oh, do you want to get some compensation for the road accident you're in? And I asked the question, I say, well, what for? And I say, and I say, well, I'm alright, there's nothing to be compensated for. But they really, so they say, no, there's probably at least a 4-figure number for you, waiting for you. And they wanted you to go there. They're trying to lead you astray, saying you claim for something that didn't hurt, didn't really cause much damage. But they were enticing me by money, weren't they? And people try and lead us astray. So that's why we have to guard our hearts. Solomon's wives here turned his heart away from the Lord. and it was his heart that got turned away. So we need to guard our hearts, because people will lead us astray. They will pull us away from God. Like I said at the start, we've got God's people, and those who aren't part of God's people. Now, people who aren't part of God's people, they're going to want to pull you away from God. They're not going to want you to be worshipping God. They're not going to encourage you into church particularly. I don't know if you've heard this, but some people have talked about it with a dating scenario, the illustration where it's easier, isn't it, to get dragged down than it is to pull someone up. Yeah? So as God's people, we're trying to pull people up to live as God would have to live, wouldn't we? And to worship God and be like that. But the rest of the people, they're trying to pull us down. But so who wants to be a volunteer? It does, isn't it? It doesn't hurt. Oh, Lucy's there. Come on, Lucy. Come and stand on this chair. There you go. There you go on the chair, Lucy. So here's Lucy. She's a woman of God, aren't you, Lucy? That's good. And here I'm a rogue. And what I'm doing is I want Lucy to be like me. What we do? I don't know. Go smoke some pot. And that's not something I do, is it? That's not a tell lie. I don't know what I'd be wanting to probably. I don't know.
Play cricket.
Play cricket. It's not particularly a sin in the Bible, but
That's what you'd want to do, though.
That's not what I want to go. No, I want to go nick money off Julian.
That's why I said play cricket.
Yeah, let's go steal off Julian. But you're saying, no, let's go to church instead. So I've got to try and pull you down to what I'm doing. You've got to try and pull me up. Okay? Take my hand. Try and pull me up, Lucy. Come on. See, that makes it much easier to pull. It's easier to pull down, isn't it? And that's the thing you take, you see. Thank you, Lucy. Oh, look at that ripple of applause. It's much easier, isn't it, to be dragged down into things, dragged into sin and the things of the world, and then it is to pull someone up into the things of God. And people lead us astray, don't they? And that's what happened here. Solomon's wives led him to foreign gods, and they led him astray to other things that weren't what he should be doing as the king. That's maybe one of the reasons that when Jesus commissioned disciples, he told them to go away and to do some ministry, he told them to preach good news and go to villages. He ordered them off to go in twos. Because so often we easily get led astray, don't we? So often when I don't know if you had a piece of homework to do or something, and you start to do the work, you're so easily distracted, aren't we? And we're so easily distracted into things which aren't particularly sin. But when you're a believer, like the devil's knocking on your door, sin's crouching at your door, isn't it? It wants to get you and have a hold of you and distract you from the things of God. And we easily get led astray. So what I want us to do now is, after we realise this point from Solomon's life, is to reflect upon who is likely to be leading you astray. So we here see for Solomon, it was his wives, wasn't it, leading him to false gods. But for you, who is leading you astray? And or who's likely to lead you astray? For Solomon, it was clearly defined that he wasn't meant to marry these people. And there we can see the part of his downfall. But people who lead us astray, it can be people in the church as well, can't it? Because if someone's got a sin that you struggle with, sometimes they'll want to engage with you in that sin, won't they? If they know that's easy, like gossip or something. So it can be a person in the church even who is likely to lead you astray. So we have to reflect, who are the people in your life that are likely to lead you astray, to lead you away from God? So Solomon was led astray by his wives. But also we see over Solomon's life, he sort of let things slip. He let things slip as time went by. In chapter 3 and verse 3, we are told that Solomon loved God. So Solomon had a heart for God. He loved God. And he did loads of things that was good. But it says in there that he let the high places remain. And there were high places in Israel where basically people would go and worship. Some people would worship God there. But even we're told that God was meant to be worshipped in Jerusalem at that time. But often it was false gods that they would go and worship in these high places. So Solomon was good, he did some good stuff, but he didn't totally get rid of all the high places. But he was doing good, he pleased God. So God appeared, we told in that reading that God appeared to him, and one time that God appeared to Solomon, he said to him, Solomon, you can have anything you ask from me and I will give it to you. Choose one thing, I'll give it to you. And you know what Solomon chose? He asked for wisdom, yeah. He said, give me wisdom so that I can govern your people well. And that pleased God. He built the temple. Now you might have heard of King David, and he was a great king, but he never got to build the temple for God. Solomon was allowed and privileged to build the temple for God, and when he built it, he dedicated it to God, and prayed that people would worship there and glorify God and honour God in coming to that temple. He also brought about peace for the surrounding nations. And like people said, when people think of kings, that's what they're meant to do. And Solomon brought a time of peace and prosperity to God's people. And his wisdom, he wrote 3,000 proverbs and 105 songs, we're told. So he did loads of things that pleased God. But now we come to chapter 11, to the one I read, and in chapter 11 it changes a little bit of a tune, doesn't it? It says, now Solomon. He changed. And it says that for when Solomon was old, he was led astray, or led to these false gods by his wives. No. And now we find that Solomon, he was in a place where he was building the temple, but he's let it slip so far that he's ended up building places of worship for the foreign gods, the false gods, at the end of 11, chapters 9 and 10. And then Nehemiah tells us this. Was it not because of marriages like these, the ones that Solomon engaged in, that Solomon, king of Israel, sinned? Among the many nations there was no king like him, for he was loved by his God, and God made him king over all Israel. But even he was led into sin by foreign women. He let things slip, hadn't he? Even he, talk about this great king, even he was led into sin. Which makes us think about ourselves, how easily it is for us to be led into sin. Someone as wise as Solomon, who wrote books of the Bible, was led into sin, so we would easily be seduced by sin. And he went from a place of bringing God's glory in the temple, building it, dedicating to God, and bringing God glory in the temple, to now he's been engaged in foreign worship, building the place of worship for these foreign gods. And there's one god called Molech, and in that god, the worship of that god, they would sacrifice children to this god. And it says in the reading that Solomon, he made sacrifices to these gods. And Molech is one of those gods. So he's slipped, hasn't he? You see where he's in this place building God's temple. Now he's quite possibly sacrificing children to foreign gods. He's let things slip. And it's a slippery slope of sin, isn't it? And I know some people where this sort of thing's happened. And what happens is, it goes in small stages, doesn't it? He's ended up he started up here, building God's temple, bringing God glory, asking for wisdom. Down here, worshipping foreign gods and sacrificing children. But it doesn't go from one day to the next day, does it? It goes through a process of little decisions and little things that go wrong. And I know one family, and they this isn't in the Bible particularly, I don't think, but they decided that they shouldn't watch TV on Sunday. They thought Sunday is a day dedicated to the Lord. We're not going to watch TV, so they did that. Didn't watch TV. But then they sort of, after time, they thought, oh no, let's just watch a bit of TV. So then they started watching TV on a Sunday. That's fine. But then they got to the stage before they started to have all sorts of entertainment on Sunday. So they went places and did things, and they started missing Sundays to go for these things of entertainment. And then they stopped going to church completely. And you see, they've gone from one place to the other, haven't they? And even the first thing they did, you think, well, that's not sin, is it? We're not a church to say you can't watch TV on a Sunday, would we? But so not particularly sin, but it's a step, isn't it? And see, after step, things can change. You get into a place that you don't wish to be. Solomon, yeah? 1,000 women. How'd you get there? Well, you start off by having one, don't you? And it was alright to have one, but the one he had was an Egyptian woman. He probably shouldn't have had that one. But it starts off with one, and I don't know if you've been on a diet. I've done diets, and sometimes I've had a diet which says I'm not going to eat any chocolate. And you stay strong, don't you? But the hardest thing to do, the first thing that breaks you, is say you've got a box of Celebrations in the cupboard. I don't know how I got there. But it's the first one, isn't it? Because you know what? Once you've eaten one, you think, might as well eat the whole box. I've had one chocolate, let's just do the whole hog now. Let's just finish this box off and get it out. Then I won't eat any more, will I? But it's the hardest, it's the first that cracks us, isn't it? And that's what it is for Solomon here. So it's like they let the first bit go, let the first thing slip, and then he said, well, I've made my decision for this path. He said, well, let's just go with it. And it all landslides down. And that's probably what it was like for Solomon. Took one wife, then took another wife, then took another wife. And he thought, well, I might as well take 5 at a time. Well, how did you get to 700 then 1,000? He just went for it, didn't he? Yeah, you probably didn't know how many he had. And it's similar to, if you think about it, how you might cheat on your wife or your partner, or how you might cheat on someone. It's going to start with small steps, isn't it? you're going to do a little bit of flirting, a little bit. It's going to take steps, isn't it? That you're going to go down a path, and you're going to end up at that door. What are the little things in your life that you're letting slip? What are the little things in your life that or what could be the little slips that would lead you to a place of worshipping foreign gods? And you know, in our culture, we haven't got people sacrificing children to Molech, have we? Or these different gods particularly. We have got Islam and Hinduism and other New Age stuff. Also, there's the god of money, isn't there? And the god of beauty and all those types of idols in the world. And there's small steps that we take to worship that god and honour that god rather than Jesus. In what areas are you letting slip that might take you down a path? So Solomon was led astray by other people, wasn't he? Led astray by foreign wives. He was also led astray by letting things slip by over time. When he was old, he got to a place where he let things go. And lastly, we sort of see that Solomon was not wholly devoted to God. Not wholly devoted to God. His heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, it reads. His lips were sometimes fully devoted to God. So we go 1 Kings 8, and I'm going to read from verse 54. This is about talking about when Solomon built the temple. So that's 1 Kings 8:54. When Solomon had finished all these prayers and supplications to the Lord, he rose from before the altar of the Lord, where he had been kneeling with his hands spread out towards heaven. He stood and blessed the whole assembly of Israel in a loud voice, saying, Praise be to the Lord, who has given rest to his people Israel, just as he promised. Not one word has failed of all of the good promises he gave through his servant Moses. May the Lord our God be with us as he was with our fathers. May he never leave us nor forsake us. May he turn our hearts to him, to walk in his ways, and to keep the commands and decrees and regulations he gave our fathers. And may these words of mine, which I have prayed before the Lord, be near to the Lord our God day and night, that he may uphold the cause of his servant and the cause of his people Israel, according to each day's need, so that all peoples of the earth may know that the Lord is God, and that there is no other. But your hearts must be fully committed to the Lord our God, to live by his decrees and obey his commands, as at this time. They are the words of Solomon. I'll tell you where he ended. And he was saying that all people, that all the earth might know that there is one God, and that there is no other. And he was fully devoted in his words, wasn't he? But we see his heart and his mindset was not fully devoted to God, because he went another way. And we see his actions at one point were fully devoted to God. So we go chapter 3 and verse 28. It's just one verse at a time, so 1 Kings chapter 3 verse 28. Now here we have Solomon. He's asked for wisdom, and then what happens is there's two women live together. They've both got a child each. One child dies, and so the ones whose child dies, she nicks the other child, pretends it's hers, and then like the other mum wakes up and says, no, that's your kid that's dead. You've got my kid. So they go to Solomon, and Solomon thinks about it, and he comes up with a great solution. Is just chop it in half, give half each. And then the person who's the real mother cries, no, let her have it. And then he sort of discerns that that's the real mother. And here we are at the end of that story. When all Israel heard the verdict the king had given, they held the king in awe, because they saw that he had wisdom from God to administer justice. So with his mouth, he was fully devoted, wasn't he? With his actions at some points, he was fully devoted to God. But his mindset and his heart was not totally devoted to God as it should have been. And we know this for a couple of reasons. One, it just tells us plainly in the reading, he said, his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God. But if people have got a Bible, could someone look at 1 Kings chapter 2 verses 1 to 3 for me? Who's going to do that? Thank you, Dave, for volunteering. So that's chapter 2 verse 1 to 3. Someone else want to help me? Alan does, and that's well done, H. Yeah, so that's chapter 3 verse 14 for Alan. And then Grenville at the back, chapter 9 verses 4 to 7. And so we have the red, one after the other, and then the rest of us are going to think, what's the link, what's the same thing that's happening in these readings? Are you ready, Dave, for chapter 2 and verse 1 to 3?
When the time drew near for David to die, he gave a charge to Solomon his son. I am about to go the way of all earth, he said. So be strong, show yourself a man and observe what the Lord your God requires. Walk in his way, keep his decrees and commands, his laws and requirements, as written in the law of Moses, so that you may prosper in all you do and wherever you go.
Yeah. And then 3:14.
If you follow me and obey my laws and commands, as your father David did, I will also give you a long life.
And then Reverend.
As for you, if you will walk before me as your father David walked, in integrity of heart and uprightness, doing according to all that I have commanded you, and will keep my statutes and my ordinances, then I will establish the throne of your kingdom over Israel forever, just as I promised to your father David, saying, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel. But if you or your sons indeed turn away from following me, and do not keep my commandments and my statutes which I have set before you, and go and serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel from the land which I have given them, and the house which I have consecrated for my name I will cast out of my sight. So Israel will become a proverb and a byword among all peoples.
Okay, so what was the theme that was in all of them that was going through those readings? It's one's King David talking to Solomon, one's God talking to Solomon, the other one's God as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Solomon. Yeah. So what's going on there?
Walk with God.
Yeah, he's telling him, each one of them is being told by different people to be fully devoted to God, to walk in his ways, to do as God had them do. And do you know, other people in the Bible, some people did get that thing that they're told again and again to do. Other people, they weren't. And what the thing is, why do you think God's telling them again and again?
It's difficult.
Because difficult is one argument, yeah, so it's difficult. Yeah, because you think they're not doing it. It's probably that's when I get told what something to do again and again. They're not really doing it. You get told again and again. So that's a clue, isn't it, that he's not doing it. He keeps getting told to do it. But also we're told he didn't do it anyway. And so we see, I said that Solomon did things let things slip, and we see that scene. But even earlier on, we see he's not really there. He's not really fully devoted. So he is the chosen heir to be the king after David. But the way he comes to being there is that in a bloody coup. And then we see that Nathan, the prophet there, is supporting him, speaking to him, encouraging him into things, which is a God's man with him, a prophet. Then after that, it's silent. It's only the start of the chapters. And we see that he declares his love for God at the start. But he allows the high places, and he marries an Egyptian, which he shouldn't be doing. He builds a temple and dedicates to God, but then the way he builds the temple is that he uses enforced labour and he accumulates unjust wealth. And he prays for wisdom, but then he doesn't act wisely and is led astray by foreign women and foreign wives. So you see, all the way through, he's not really fully devoted to God. Now, if this was a marriage and he wasn't fully devoted, and I don't mean by fully devoted that this husband, wakes up and makes breakfast every morning, does the hoovering. Not that sort of fully devoted, but fully devoted in the sense that this wife is the one wife. I've chosen one, and it's this one among no others. Okay? If a husband isn't devoted in that way, then he's really not devoted at all, is he? It's like he's thinking, well, there might be some others out there for me, actually. He's not really fully devoted. If you're not fully devoted, it can mean you're not devoted. It ends up often as a decision to follow him in none. So where are your no-go areas? Where have you said, I will follow you, God, but not here, and not this area, and not that area? Solomon was a faulty king, wasn't he? He was led astray by foreign wives. He let things slip, and slowly ended up sacrificing to false gods. And his heart was not fully devoted to God. He gave in to lots of different areas. We try to be kings in our lives, don't we? We try to rule and reign our little domains. But you know what? We are faulty gods just like Solomon. We muck up just like Solomon did, and we become a bit like him. We get easily led astray, don't we? We get led astray by people. We let things slip, and our hearts often aren't fully devoted to the Lord. Solomon was a faulty king. We are faulty kings. There is only really one king, the King of Kings, isn't it? And everyone knows who that is, don't you? The real king's Jesus, isn't it? Jesus is the one who is a true king. And as I said earlier, the king is a real good king, is one who serves, isn't it? And that's what Jesus did. He left heaven, and he humbled himself, and he became a man. He took on flesh. He experienced what it was like to feel hurt and pain and lived among us. And he was obedient, he was fully devoted to God. So when God asked him to do things, he did them. And he met the law, he did what God would have him do. He wasn't led astray by other people, no, he led people to God. He didn't let things slip. Jesus was consistently good. And his heart was fully devoted to God. So obedient to God was he that he took obedience to death. And he died on a cross. And he was obedient to that point. And he died in our place. He became sin for us. So the way that we've messed up like Solomon, that was placed on Jesus. And God punished Jesus for that messing up that we have done. All this, our sin, all our wrongdoing, all our shame was on Jesus. And Jesus died in our place. And he took our shame. And he did it for us. He came and he served us. And Jesus is the king of this kingdom. And Jesus is going to invite people into his kingdom. Solomon had a good kingdom. People came from afar and looked at this kingdom and said, it's great. Even the Queen of Sheba came and said, it's amazing, isn't it? And went away praising God. But that's only a small bit of this kingdom that's going to be. It's going to be an amazing kingdom, and Jesus is the king of this kingdom. And he has taken your sin. He's dealt with it. He's dealt with it, and he's thrown it away. He's cleaned it up. And he's now given you a place. He's made you a son or daughter of God. And he's placed you in his robes of righteousness so that you can enter this kingdom. You can be part of it. And that's what he does for you. And it's a kingdom that's to come in the future. But the great thing about Jesus' kingdom, you get to enjoy some of it now. We don't get to enjoy all of it because he hasn't come and brought it all about. But you get to enjoy the benefits of being part of this kingdom now. But really, to the extent you get to enjoy it, depends on you. Because to enjoy his kingdom now, you need to follow the king. You need to live for the king. So will you be led by King Jesus? Will you follow King Jesus? And will you devote yourself to the King of Kings, the Lord Jesus? If we live according to our own kingship and what we choose, you know what? We'll be doing evil in the eyes of the Lord, and we'll be led astray, and we won't do things that are good for us. But if we are led by the King Jesus, we get to enjoy some of that kingdom now, and then take into that, finally, to that great kingdom, a new kingdom, that's going to be heaven on earth in the future. So, remember those three questions I asked you. Well, the first one was, Solomon, he was led astray by people. What people leading you astray? The second one was, we let things slip. What are you letting slip? And the other one was, Solomon had no-go areas. What are your no-go areas? You need to give over our lives to the King Jesus, don't we, and follow him at all costs.